Step onto the field. I'm Patrick Dangerfield.
And I'm Josh Jenkins. Pat, by the hair on your chinny chin, you are thrilled to a prelim final. Just talk us through it. You were out there for a small portion of the game anyway. You're on the bench a fair bit, but you were out there. Just tell us what it felt like to play footy in front of 91,000 and, more specifically, what it felt like when Gary Rowan handballed this ball off to Max Holmes to kick the sealer.
Out wide, Cameron. Out in front of Maynard. Here's Rowan. Out. Players out everywhere. Rowan. Holmes. Goal.
Incredible passage of play, that, wasn't it? I feel like footy's back now. We've had, and it's been interrupted through COVID, and then we obviously had finals in Queensland and in Western Australia, but it's different to the MCG when there's 90,000 screaming fans there. You couldn't hear yourself think, let alone a teammate, give you instruction out there. It was just extraordinary to be a part of. And it just feels like footy's back. And what an incredible weekend of footy it was, JJ.
The best ever. I mean, I was given a little bit of feedback from our man Julian De Stoop from SEN, formerly of Fox Footy fame, the man who never recognises a celebrity when they walk his way. He said the 1994 finals were better. So there was a goal after the siren. There was a drop mark on the siren.
Essendon were obviously involved in those finals.
Essendon were involved.
Because that's the only way De Stoop would be talking about. Exactly.
Yep. Their last visit to the finals, 94. But whether it is or it isn't, who knows. But all I know is we had a phenomenal comeback with Fremantle coming. I turned the game off, coming back from the dead. We had an absolute slogfest between the Cats and the Pies. We had the upset and we had the shootout. We had absolutely everything you could possibly want in a first round of finals, the first weekend of finals. Absolutely incredible.
I felt the Western Bulldogs Fremantle game, I thought that was going to go the way that it did early. I thought one team would get on top. And I had this feeling that this is how the game was going to unfold. And then all of a sudden the second quarter starts and things stop to a grind, and then Freo get one, and then slowly but surely and Luke Beveridge mentioned it in his post-match press conference, death by 1,000 cuts. And that's the way it was.
Yeah, it was. It certainly was. It was. I mean, it's a bitter pill for them to swallow. And Optus Stadium, not a happy hunting ground. They got blown off the park in the grand final last year, and then to be 40 points up and to lose that would have been a long flight home for the Dogs boys, and probably equally as long in terms of review and exit meetings and all those type of things. They feel like they should be still participating in the finals, but not to be. So the Dogs, they go home, Richmond go home, Geelong and the Swannies go through to a prelim final. So it's Sydney host a prelim final, Geelong host a prelim final at the MCG, and we've got a couple of ripping games of footy, some knockout semi-finals this weekend. So back to the Cats.
Cattery.
How do you reflect? We're sitting here on a Monday afternoon, so you've had plenty of time to digest the game, and I imagine you've had a bit of a look at some game film, had a bit of a look back at your own game and the team's game, and spoken to some key people. How do you reflect on the performance? The win's obviously amazing, but how do you reflect on the game?
Well, like you said, the win's the most important part. I still feel like there's parts of our game that we need to improve on, but I think notwithstanding that is the incredible pressure that both teams were under. That contributes to, at different stages going away from how you'd ideally like to play. But this is a furnace of fire, and Collingwood's pressure, as well as ours, right throughout the game. Like it was on for young and old right throughout it. It never really felt like one team, got too far ahead, even though Collingwood, I think they kicked, was it the first or the second within that last quarter and got out to a 12-point lead.
Yep.
We know in modern day footy that's that can be rectified really quickly. So it always felt like we were in the game, even though we weren't executing, right throughout. But it makes you feel alive when you're running back out, you're looking up to the members, and there's 30-odd thousand in that part of the seating area. And even when we got to the ground 3 hours early, it's going to be a packed house when at the very back it's starting to line up, and the fact that in the bleachers it's packed. So there was a great spirit around it, and hopefully this is just reintroducing Australian sport to max crowds again. And this is a really I feel like this is a launching point for not only now but above and beyond 2022.
Now the reason I know this is because when the ball was bounced to start every quarter, you were sitting beside me on the interchange bench. What's the go there? You and Joel Selwood started on the bench a lot. Now, talk us through the because the bench has been seen as the four least potent players, or the last four picked, start on the bench. That's old school terms.
Easy.
Explain, because a lot of people still see it as that. I used to get the odd message. Oh, you're only named on the bench. Just relax. We spent 100 rotations in the era of 100 rotations. So just explain to us in layman's terms, why are you starting on the bench every quarter?
I wasn't super pleased with it, Josh.
Oh, okay. So conversations to be had.
Conversations to be had.
Right.
No, as you said, because of how we want to play with as much speed on the game as possible. It's about take your turn, and then when you get on, spin them. The challenge in the weekend was the ball got caught on the other side of the ground. So there's a couple of quarters where you're sitting for the first 10 minutes of a quarter, chomping at the bit to try and get on. But you can't just dislodge yourself from the play at the time because it's too hot for that.
Yeah.
And especially with the width of the ground. So, it got lonely there at different stages because we just couldn't get the rotations that we wanted. And then in the end, we probably spin them a bit too much because I think it was with 4 minutes to go. We were struggling a bit.
Yes, that was it.
The amount of rotations that we had. So you and your cronies on the bench probably need to reflect on how many you're rolling through, because I think Collingwood had about 10 to... No, don't.
Well, they didn't
pass the buck.
They didn't. They underused theirs and we overused ours. So two different. But in the end, we ran over the top of the pies. So maybe...
Well, that's the purpose, isn't it?
Maybe we got it right.
Speaking of rotations, I found this just astonishing. This was a throwback to the 90s. Lockie Neal playing, I think it was 129 possible minutes of 136.
Played the whole second half.
In modern day footy, I can't articulate well enough just how preposterously amazing that is. So, and how taxing that is to ask a player that plays in the most demanding, in a sense, of how dynamic you need to be with speed around the contest, but also the transitional element of a midfielder. For him to play out that game the way that he did, finish with 39 touches, I think it was, his best on ground. He's probably cost Richmond the opportunity to progress, and he has won it for Brisbane. His game was enormous.
Why? Okay, so I was asked this question on Friday on radio, and I didn't really have a good enough answer. Why then do we need to spin rotations as much as we do? Why do midfielders need to play 65% if he can go and do that and have no rest in the second half and show no signs of fatigue at any stage to make an amazing rundown tackle in the dying stages of the game? Why then?
I don't have an answer for you. I do not have an answer.
So this might be one where the old school, the dinosaurs, quote unquote, of footy, they might be correct.
Well, maybe. And I could be totally wrong here. So this is a total stab in the dark. But there's just I can't see how this would be Brisbane's plan, whether it's their PPT or their coaching staff, to say, Lock, you just go play the second half. I reckon that is Lockie saying,
he's taking it,
I am doing this.
Yeah, agreed.
This is what the moment demands, and I'm just doing it. And if I need to, I'm coming off. But if I don't, well, I'm playing. So I just and I could be proven wrong, but I think that is just a player saying this is what the occasion demands and this is what I'm going to do. And if the bench call it, well, so be it. If the coach calls it, well, so be it. But Fags sits on the bench, so he knows the players coming on and off. You can see him throughout a game how much he converses with them. So he's aware. So obviously they were happy to let it ride, and he was spectacular.
You've played some amazing games. When I've got a view that when you're in the zone, you don't feel the fatigue as much. When you're just in the zone, when the ball finds you and you're clean, you're one touch, you're kicking it beautifully, you just don't feel the fatigue as much. You can cover the ground and it just feels a bit easier. He was clearly in that space on the weekend. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. People say, well, what do you mean in the zone? But when you're just absolutely feeling yourself physically and emotionally, you're feeling yourself, and that's clearly the state that he was in. So he was, as you said, the difference between Brisbane and Richmond the other night. Gives great more credence to those who say you should tag a little bit more often. But
was he? Or was the arc? Surely.
Oh, don't go there. It was so long ago.
Surely we shouldn't have.
Well, I'm actually very well versed to speak on this because a similar thing happened in the showdown. But
yes, you can't tell me that we can get better angles from crowd members with their iPhones than we can.
Yeah, amazing. Well, why don't we just airdrop? Why doesn't the Arc man just put airdrop on, right?
Yes.
And just get him flicked to him quick, and he can just go, yep, there's, okay, that. Because the one I saw on Twitter, absolutely no debate. No disputing it whatsoever. It was a behind. No disputing it whatsoever.
There is a memo to all players, though. Make sure you celebrate it no matter what.
Well,
no
clearly.
Adam Gilchrist walking off and taking the gloves off, because if you take into account a player's reaction, Jason Dunstall would not have scored through his whole career if we were going off.
He was almost sad when he scored a goal.
He would have never scored. So forget 1,000. He wouldn't have kicked 500 if we were going off a player's reaction.
Tom Lynch actually said he was someone airport stopped him, not door stopped him. Airport stopped him, lounge stopped him, and he said he lost the ball in the lights. That's why he didn't give a reaction at all. It was I'd give it back to the umpires, to be honest. It's a shame it happens in these moments, and it's hard to argue that it didn't cost Richmond the game, but I would be happy to see the decisions. There are 1,000 human errors on the field by players and even central umpires. Why can't the goal umpires be allowed to make mistakes as well? So I would happily give it back to the umpires. Or what I definitely would do is take away the goal umpires' initial guess or initial decision, because that has too much.
What's the point of having him there then?
No, well, it has too much impact on the outcome.
Because that's his job. That's what he's paid to do.
Yeah, so be all in or all out. So don't get him to say, or her to say, I think it was a goal, but I want to check, because there's too much weight on the decision, even though there's evidence to the contrary, but you can't quite overrule it. So I would say either don't have it at all, or have it, but then don't have the goal umpire make a guess.
AFLW Round 2 kicked off over the weekend as well, Josh, and there was carnage throughout the round.
Yeah, there were injuries all over the place. There was a really ugly broken leg in Adelaide in the Dogs and Port Adelaide game. And now I don't know the player. I don't know who the player was who made the smother, and I don't know, and I don't really care for a good reason, because it's not about any individual. But what I've seen, Pat, is over the course of a few years, and it happens in the AFLM, it happens in the men's game as well. But what happens? There are too many contests where some AFLW athletes are going in with really poor techniques, they got technical flaws. They're absolutely charging in, leading with their head. Girls are going hitting each other in the head. The attempted smother was, you want to be desperate to smother the footy, but it was pretty, it was reckless, and in the end, it results in a broken tibia and fibula. So it's really, really ugly. The game was halted for 30 minutes. So I think there's as the game's going to continue to evolve with the skills and the tactics, the actual technique of how to protect yourself and how to be diligent in terms of protecting your opponent needs to come a long way as well, because we are seeing some injuries that don't necessarily need to be there.
Yeah, I think if Britt had her time again, she'd you approach it differently, and that's easy to say in hindsight. It was an interesting round. North Melbourne were fascinating against who I think are the premiership favourites, and that's most people's premiership predictions with Melbourne, but they kicked 4 straight and nearly got over the top.
Melbourne were inaccurate.
They were, and Melbourne dominated the game, but I feel like the next few weeks are going to be interesting because we're going to start to see where teams are really at. I think the first few weeks there's this real pent up and build up of emotion around getting ready to crack in. The season's here. But now, after the first few weeks, we'll start to see
the cream
rise to the top, and where that middle rung of teams are, and where the challenges and the teams that will struggle, which traditionally has been the new teams within the competition. We know there's 4 new teams this season. On that note, Essendon were actually terrific against Carlton, and it'll be in the AFLW pod this week.
Well, don't spoil it.
But I'm going to rip through a team who has been in the competition for a long time, and this is not to do with the players in the field. This is to do with how they've built their team and how I still don't think that they are anywhere near close to competing with the best teams. And why haven't they been able to set up a team and a structure that can match the Brisbanes, the Adelaides? Fremantle have been unlucky this year, but their first...
They would have won the premiership probably in the COVID season.
Yeah, they've had some...
Okay, so you're going to tear a club a new one?
Well, I'm tearing around how they've set up and how they've designed their team, and what they've been is a development ground for wonderful players to piss off and to join other teams, and that's fine. That's their choice. But how they have not been able to keep these players and establish themselves as one of the best teams in the competition. It's time.
Right, there
the
you
feedback's
go. We'll
coming, Josh.
talk about a little tease for the AFLW pod, hosted by Marty and Patrick Dangerfield, if you don't mind. So that'll be out in the coming hours and days as well. Now, jumping off the footy for a moment, the greatest tennis player of my lifetime, man or woman, Serena Williams has officially bowed out at the hands of Aussie Isla Tomljanovic. She was too good for her. It was an unbelievable game. I was working on radio, trying to, or supposed to be watching the races on Saturday afternoon, but I could not take my eyes off this game. The last game went for about 14 minutes. It was completely unbelievable what was happening. In the end, Aussie Isla end up winning 7-6, 6-7, 6-1. Serena, she was chasing her 24th Grand Slam title, which would have equaled Margaret Court. So in the end, she has to settle for 23, which is not bad if you don't mind. So after the match, of course, an amazing. I think Serena was in tears. With 3 or 4 points to go. No, she was definitely in tears during the interview, but I think when she realised that, well, I'm done here, she was in tears at that point, and she spoke after the game. Or after the match concluded, she spoke on court about some of the greatest influences in her life, and we know about most of those people who have been in her life for a long time, and she spoke about her sister, Venus.
So, I wouldn't be Serena if it wasn't Venus, so thank you, Venus.
Venus was just sitting there, just stone-faced, didn't have any emotion. I'm sure she did on the inside, but didn't have any on the outside, whereas Serena was a blubbering mess. So the greatest tennis player of my lifetime, I'll make that, put that opinion out there. Anyway, I'm not a huge tennis fan. You probably know more about, well, you do know more about the game than me, but she was absolutely dominant all the way through her career, and she bows out at age 40.
I remember when there was a stage where it was an article, and I remember it so vividly. It was in The Age at the time, how Venus and Serena were ruining tennis because every championship they were playing
too good
against each other. It was, their dominance as a family. I'm not sure we've seen such dominance, taking over a world sport like the Williams sisters. And it's interesting now that Serena has retired, the player with the current most championships is Venus, who is still competing. So it just shows...
Loose term.
loose term. It just shows the dominance, and I think it's appropriate when she spoke about Venus that it makes total sense to me for those that play elite sport. When you do have siblings that play as well, there's a rivalry that extends just beyond your opponents per se, outside of the four walls of your home. It no doubt it has driven those two to greater heights. I think we've seen that in the AFL this year with Josh and Nick Dacos.
Yes.
Josh has had a spectacular season, and I reckon part of that is seeing just how
Little
well
brother
Nick has played. Absolutely. I think it contributes to it. I think we'll see that with the King boys once both are
playing for St Kilda.
fit and firing. Well, don't they wish they had both of them?
Yes. Well, what it also does, I agree with you, but what it also does is having a sibling there, they have an absolute understanding of the bad times as well. So they have an understanding of, you might talk to a friend. What do you mean? How could you possibly be so upset? You're making all this money and everyone loves you, but you've got an understanding for the moments where things aren't going so well either. Just quickly onto Formula One. It was a bad weekend for Aussie Dan Riccardo. It was a bad week, and then it was a bad night on the weekend in Netherlands, the Dutch GP. He finished 17th, which was actually second last because two drivers didn't finish the race, and he's been replaced officially. Finally, the news is out there that Aussie young gun Oscar Piastri is going to replace him at McLaren. So Riccardo's future is unclear at this point. It's been 32. Ugly. It's not super old for Formula One. I mean, he's got another 5, 6, 7 years in him in terms of his age.
But it seems to have been the flow of recruits that they are getting younger.
They definitely are getting younger across Formula One. Like Charles Leclerc's young, Max Verstappen's young, Pierre Gasly's really young. Oscar Piastri's clearly a young man as well. So no doubt it's, there's plenty of youth. Sebastian Vettel's going to finish up. Fernando Alonso's probably defying the situation. Lewis Hamilton's not getting any younger, but certainly has been a drive and a push to get younger drivers involved. So good for Australia in terms of another Aussie involved, but unfortunately it's one Aussie in, one Aussie out. So we'll follow Daniel's future with interest, Pat.
Last week, Josh, Washington Commanders,
yes.
NFL rookie Brian Robinson, he was shot multiple times.
With a gun.
Shot, yes. Well, it does happen in the States quite a bit. In a robbery and alleged carjacking. He's had surgery and, from all reports, is recovering well.
Yes.
He's also shot, pardon the pun, to the top
well written, Pat.
Of the NFL betting markets around Comeback Player of the Year. Where do you see this panning out? Well,
I mean, I fell over myself when I saw that he was the favourite for the Comeback Player of the Year. Now, the Comeback Player of the Year is it's a well-regarded award in the NFL. It's for players who come off an ACL or a torn Achilles or a season-long issue, but because the narrative plays a big part in this award as well, so how serious and significant the story is. So
9mm out of the
just a couple in the leg, I think he end up having, which is just scary stuff.
Flesh wound.
So it was he's not even on the same planet as most of the players at the top of the betting for that award, but an amazing story, amazingly scary, but now positive situation that looks like he's going to be okay to play at some point this season. Pat, now I know you'll be keen on this. The best horse in some people's mind returned to the racetrack up there at Randwick on the weekend. That's Sydney. Zaaki, he did the business in the Tramway Stakes at Randwick on the weekend. Pat, do you reckon he's the best horse in Australia?
He's in the top few, Josh.
Top what? How many?
He's in the top few, like top half dozen, with the length that he runs on and the track. He obviously loves running on
with the length that he runs on
dirt, and I'll be catching all of my horse
Power.
Paddling, running on harnessed, and of course our field horsepower.
Oh,
podcasts.
why did I even ask? Why did I even ask? He loves the length that he runs on.
No, I'm looking forward to. Can't wait for the spring carnival.
Are you going to get there?
Haven't had the blazer on for a long time due to COVID. So I'm looking forward to getting out the the beige cream, the ivories, and probably going something a little darker for the
bird
top
cage.
Not really my style, the bird cage.
That's where the influencers go.
If I'm going, there, I'm going to, to throw some money away. I mean, to bet.
Responsibly.
Always. I'm not a massive gambler, but if I go, I'm going to have a little dabble.
Yeah, responsibly. And now, before we get on to our favourite segments, your favourite segments, the last thing, and back this week, and I cannot wait. The NFL, it is back. Friday morning, 10:20 Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's Melbourne time. Buffalo at the LA Rams. Buffalo, the emerging team behind Josh Allen, at the LA Rams, the Super Bowl champion, the world champion, LA Rams, the world champs. They play the sport in one country. And Channel 7 on 7, mate, Pat. You don't need a Game Pass subscription. You don't necessarily need Foxtel to watch the NFL. You can watch it on 7, mate. Our great friends at Channel 7. So Patriots at Dolphins. Bill Belichick, who the whispers coming out of New England are disgusting. Like, yuck. They're going to be terrible this year. But they're at Miami. That's an AFC East matchup. And then this is a beauty. About 6:30 on Monday morning. Las Vegas at LA Chargers. Two emerging teams. Vegas made the playoffs last year. The Chargers have got one of the best young quarterbacks in the game in Justin Herbert. Two massive, massive games. I'll be setting the alarm for 2:55 a.m. Cannot wait.
Well, I'll wait for your report on that. And the other news, obviously, Josh, Tom Brady may be down to 7 rings.
What's that?
He might be down to 7 rings.
Oh, no.
Because he's obviously got 7 rings, plus his wedding ring.
People have been.
Plus his wedding ring. But at the moment, the rumour mill is
And you're not talking about the Patriots haven't lost one for cheating. You're talking about the marital situation.
I'm talking about the marital situation of widely regarded as the greatest player of all time, Tom Brady. But the rumour mill in the States is going into overdrive. And this is literally every podcast, every sports station is reporting that their marriage is on the rocks. And I don't want us to be new idea here. But,
you're going a good way about it.
But that is apparently a key reason behind his late start.
Well, his holiday, his hiatus.
His hiatus to the pre-season.
He took 11 days off.
And there was no, and we spoke about this last week on the Field Pod, there was sort of no reason given for it. All he said was, I'm 45, man, there's a lot of shit going on in my life. Quote unquote.
Which wasn't flying with
Which didn't fly because he never speaks like that, and you mentioned that. So there's a little bit more playing under the surface here. So that's going to be an interesting little buy story, which will be one of the main stories because I don't think either of you nor I believe that the Buccaneers will be anywhere near.
No, I'm worried about them. They play Dallas in week 1 at Dallas. I'm worried about both teams, but I'm certainly worried about
How about
Tampa
them Cowboys
in that situation. So that's the NFL. It's back. You can catch it on Channel 7, mate. This Monday morning, 3 a.m. Don't miss it. Now, time for Pat Mirror on the media.
Yes, and we love this, Josh. So this is a bit of a recycled one. But I feel like it's still valuable enough. This was on our AFLW pod last week, where we covered off round 1 and we previewed some of round 2. But I like to do my research when it comes to covering all things topical of AFLW.
Heard it all.
One of the pods that I listen to each week is the W Show with Shani and Sam.
Shani Layton, yes.
Yep. And Sam Lame. And they interviewed Nicole Livingston, and this is how one little excerpt of the interview went.
Before we let you go, and Shans, I'm sure we'll have one final question to you, but one that I've been on about for several years now is just the executive of the AFL, and it's been my very firm belief that there should be a dedicated general manager at the AFL that is dedicated to AFLW. Now, I know that the argument is, yes, but AFLW is in the brain and the mindset of every single executive and employee of the AFL. I maintain that I think a GM of AFLW sitting on the AFLW exec is entirely appropriate. Could you just explain why that is not the case?
Well, the good news is I am GM of women's football and Laura Kane is GM of AFL competitions, so AFL and AFLW.
Oh, that's a double blemish.
Yeah, I understand an excerpt without context is dangerous, but it doesn't matter. This is the Field AU pod. We can do what we like. So Sam may have been alluding to the fact that they've got to sit on the exec, which Nicole Livingston doesn't. But I did find it humorous when she was talking about a dedicated AFLW GM, given the fact that she was speaking to the dedicated AFLW GM.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of, I haven't done it yet, it reminds me of, you have sometimes, every now and then on radio.
Well, I love you, Sam, but I had, That's,
yeah, it was a blunder.
It's mirror on the media.
It was a double blunder.
We hold no bars.
I don't think she realised, Sam realised that she was going to get flat battered actually she wasn't. Nicole rocked back on the back foot and dispatched her.
It was a little bit heated throughout that interview. Not heated, but it was combative at times because Sam tends to speak her mind, as some people do, but not all. And those two, it got heated. I enjoyed
maybe
it.
we should extend the olive branch to Nicole and get her on the AFLW pod. That'd be a nice little challenge for you and your wife, Amadi. What I was going to say is that reminded me of when you're on radio every now and then, you start a long-winded question and someone, your co-host might look at you and,
where are you going with this?
Has he already asked this question? I'm asking a question that's already been asked. It hasn't happened to me yet, but it's definitely going to happen at some stage. Now, 3 votes, Pat, and we're going to start off with we don't go. I'm not a music guy in the sense that I don't know anything about music. I don't know the names of any songs. I just hear them and I like them. But we are both fans of the Foo Fighters. I think
we love the Fooies. Love the Fooies.
Now, of course, the drummer Taylor Hawkins passed away some time ago, and incredibly sad. And the Foo Fighters held, among others, held a tribute concert at Wembley Stadium in the UK not long ago. And when the Foo Fighters went to play There Goes My Hero, they got Taylor's son, Shane, whose first name is actually Oliver, but they call him Shane. Shane Hawkins got up on stage and joined in and played absolutely incredibly. Have a listen to some of this. Absolutely amazing, Pat. I'll just let it just play in the background now. If you haven't seen the video,
it's amazing.
Go on to YouTube and have a look. He's actually I talk about the apple not falling far from the tree. He is a stud on the drums. He's got all the moves. He's flicking the drumsticks in his hands. He's incredible, and it was pretty. I had no idea of the background, and when I saw it, it was quite emotional to see, the photos on the big screen of he and his dad and him sitting in that seat playing with the Foo Fighters is incredible.
How proud the old man would be as well, just watching from up above, at his son playing the way that he did. It's time for Goose of the Week, Josh. That's the 3 votes. Well, Goose of the Week, the Aussie cricket team, they are very much lucky and fortunate that the AFL Finals is happening at the moment, because it was the Australian team's worst one-day international performance ever.
Oh, it was absolutely putrid. It was the first time ever.
First
time ever we've been beaten by Zimbabwe at home. So we've been beaten by them only 3 times ever. Our previous lowest total, ODI total, 50 over total against Zimbabwe was 209, and that was in Harare in 2014. We only managed 141, and thank heavens. Now, I know a lot of people don't like David Warner and don't have a lot of time for him. I'm neither here nor there.
We would have been all out for 90, mate, if he didn't play.
Less than that, mate. He scored 94, and the team has scored 141. It was a collapse of the highest possible order. It was absolutely sad. And you know the worst part? And this is the reason why, the Australian cricket team, Goose of the Week, Joe the Goose of the Week.
Yep.
Luckily for them, but the worst part of all, no one even knew the game was on, mate.
No. It didn't feature in any back page. It was extraordinary.
Well, once upon a time, that would have been, I know the footy's on, but that would have been not back page. It would have been a little clip at the top of their back page, and it would have been inside the back page. The collapse of Australian cricket. It doesn't garner not even a whimper.
We need Packer back.
The only people covering the cricket are us, because we spoke about the Andrew Simons tribute last week at the Townsville Stadium, and that was fantastic. But thank God we didn't dish up this performance on the back of that, because that was absolutely woeful.
Can I finish on one thing before we go?
You can, but we've got to plug all about our other 17 pods before we go, but go for it.
Well, of course. Well, there's AFLW, Mards and I, so that'll be coming out in the next couple of days. Horsepower.
Yes.
Group 1 racing from Flemington this week.
Yes.
And what is it about backing charities and winners? You've got something there?
3 weeks of the pod, 3 wins for Kids Plus Foundation. We currently have $511 in the kitty, if you don't mind. And I tell you what, the co-hosts on Horsepower are 0 for 3, and I'm 3 for 3, so any danger.
NFL Week 1 pod drops immediately as well. But I want to finish on Cam Smith and his apparent defection to Live Golf. No, well, we've described it as a defection, as a nation. And we, as a nation, we are talk about tall and poppy. We're a frickin' disgrace. The fact that we can bag a bloke when, if you were put in the same situation, I'm not sure you're sitting there saying no to 140 mil. When it's the equivalent of the IPL when 2020 took off and people were being castrated for going and playing over in that competition above above representing Australia.
Yeah.
Like we did against...
It's a good call. Call.
Like we did against Zimbabwe the other night.
Yeah, isn't that a great representation
because that was
of your
terrific.
country?
Good on him. It's
a good call. Yeah, good on him. Man, his kids are going to be wealthy and are going to have, be set up. And you know what? In 5 years, they'll all be the same thing anyway, so it's not going to matter. So
it's comedy.
I like that. Nice way to finish. That's a wrap for us. JJ in Danger. Finals Week 1 edition in the books. You've got the week off, but, of course, we've got a couple of big games. Yep. Melbourne v Brisbane on Friday night, and then Collingwood hosts Fremantle Saturday night, both games at the MCG. Let's hope for another week of finals as good as the one we've just witnessed. Pat said, AFLW pod, Horsepower, and the NFL podcast all out either now or very soon, so make sure you download those. Give them a listen, get around us. That's it for us. Thanks for tuning in. We are out.